I call our meeting to order. We're going to convene at this time our public hearing on the 2016-2017 general fund budget. And prior to starting that, one of our board members, Ms. Hammond, is going to phone in. So Ms. Stowers will help get her on the line, and we'll start.
Ms. Hammond, can you hear me? Okay, I'm going to put you on speakerphone now.
Honey, ma'am.
Ms. Hammond, we have you on speakerphone, and you're projecting out to the audience, and when you need to speak, if you'll somehow get my attention, I will certainly recognize you. Thank you for being here.
Okay, and Mr. Gann,
Yes,
I'd like to say I would not have planned my vacation in conflict with a school board meeting, but when you needed to make this change, I requested this privilege of calling in by phone, and I just want to thank the Dr. Hefner's staff, especially Ms. Stowers, for the added work of the request. I know that's not probably an easy job to add me by phone, but I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I was going to thank you publicly in front of our public because you were, we had several conflicts, and you made it known that you had planned your vacation, and I really appreciate you allowing this meeting to go on at this night, which was in conflict with your vacation. So we're thanking each other. Ms. Stowers was just under pressure to dial you up, so that's where we're going to go. First thing.
Listen, I thank you because I know that except for hiring a superintendent, the most important thing we do is the budget, and in order to sustain our excellence. And so I appreciate you letting me be part of it by phone.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Hammond. So at this time, we're going to hear from Mr. Lynn Richardson to give us a 2016-2017 budget overview. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Gant, members of the board. Here tonight to talk about the 2016-2017 proposed general fund budget. Point this thing in the right direction. And my usual disclaimer, but I will let you know that the budget has passed the General Assembly and has gone through the governor's office, and so it is now an approved 2017 general fund budget for the state. All of the projections that you see are based upon 135-day updated memberships. I want to hit on a couple of items here while we're on this page very briefly. Currently, the appropriated base student cost for the current year is $2,220. If you looked at state law as far as the Education Finance Act goes, that should be $2,862. So we have a difference there of $642 of funding that we should have gotten per pupil. The actual funded amount of the base student cost is $2,197. That is lower than what we were actually funded out in fiscal year 2016. We were funded at $2,290. The 2015-16 base student cost is appropriated at $2,350. According to the statute, it should be $2,933, so we're still $583 per pupil short in that area. The $2,350 projected base student cost for next year is also lower than what we were actually funded at in 2007, which we were funded at $2,367. Here's all the additions to our proposed budget for 2017. We're looking at our contract of services increasing by $1.6 million. That includes our school resource officer funding increasing by, our expenditures for the contract to increase by $550,181. We're looking at increasing our substitute budget by $446,291, and we're also adding money to our technology in the amount of $650,000. We also have added an additional social worker. We've got a $500 loyalty bonus for all of our district employees. We budgeted for the student insurance and the athletic insurance in the amount of $157,629. We've also done away with or eliminated many of our select fees across the district. We've also backfilled our supply accounts in our schools to the tune of $760,715. And then you can see the other adjustments we made. And the big item in our budget that's increasing is the cost of living of 2% for all of our employees, step increases for all eligible employees, any kind of credential changes we have, terminal leave, and fringe benefit costs that are increasing of $4,362,242. So out of the $8 million increase in our budget, $5,766,000 of that is attributable strictly to salaries and fringe. Here's how we're projecting our local revenue for next year, or excuse me, our revenue for the general fund budget for next year, but I'm looking at local revenue here. That's going to comprise of 37% of our budget roughly. And this has been adjusted since our last meeting to reflect some based on actual collections here, to reflect some increases there, delinquent taxes being the one that we've increased that budget a small amount. State revenue is expected to increase as well. The big item here that you don't see is Education Foundation supplement, showing up here at zero. If you recall, in our last budget hearing, we had a little over $1 million on that line that was inserted into the budget but did not make it through the process. So actually our state revenue has decreased a little bit from what we had in our prior budget, although some the fringe benefits has been updated, so it offset it to some degree. I guess the net change in our state revenue projection from our last version of the budget was approximately $747,000 negative. And these are just other items: indirect costs of $265,000, transfer from EIA, and this is the money used for teacher salaries and fringe, and is also funding approximately 1% of the teacher 2% cost of living. To make up the shortfall in our budget since our last meeting, we're asking the board to consider using $670,385 of our operational balance to balance this budget. So that means our total funds available with the operational balance would be $174,506,667. And this just shows you a breakdown of how that revenue is coming in, with 37% of our revenue coming from the local sources and approximately 60% coming from state sources. Here's how the expenditures will break down. Salaries of $111,126,112. That comprises 63% of our budget, almost 64%. Fringe benefits of $41,123,618. That comprises approximately 23.57%. Together, you'll notice instead of being in the 90% range of salaries and fringe, we have, by increasing some other line items in this budget, we're now down to 87.25% of our salaries and fringe going towards our entire budget. Contracted services of $12,213,301. Supplies and materials, $8,643,667. Other objects, $968,224, and transfers and payments of $431,745, giving us a total expenditures expected in 2017 of $174,506,667. This is just a graphical representation of the breakdown of that, and as you can see, salaries and fringe total approximately 87% of our budget. This is a comparison of the current year's budget, amended budget, and next year's budget. And as you can see, we're expecting salaries to increase $4,910,742, or 4.62%. That includes all those items I mentioned before, with the employee loyalty bonus, the cost of living increases, and the step increases. Fringe benefits are expected to increase by $856,189, which is a 2.13% increase. Contracted services increasing by $1,611,344. That percent of change is a 15.2% increase. That includes those items that I mentioned earlier, with the increased costs of our school resource officers and, school resource officers, our substitute cost, and our additional technology funds. Supplies and materials increasing by $760,715, which is a 9.65% increase. That also includes the amount of funds that we put towards eliminating fees. Other objects increasing by $157,629, which is a 19.45% increase. That reflects the cost for our athletic and student accident insurance. And then you'll see a $100,000 reduction in transfers and payments, and that is where we have reduced our fringe benefits costs going to the food service fund. Grand total increase in its general fund budget is expected to be $8,055,646, which is a 4.84% increase over the current year's budget. So our projected revenue, including the operational balance of $670,385, is $174,506,667, which is what our expected expenditures are to be next year as well. So we're recommending an approval of the $174,506,667 general fund budget, utilizing the $670,385 of the general fund operating balance. I don't know if you remember when we had our discussion reading, I had this quote in there. You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you might find you get what you need. I think that's the case this year with all the meetings that we had with the legislators, all the things that we've asked for. We did not get a lot of those. However, I think we did get what we needed this year, so that's really helped our budget situation. This is, for your information, this is what our millage, allowable millage increase would be if the board were to choose to go for a millage increase. We'd be allowed under the Section 61-230 section of Code of Laws to increase by 3.9 mils for 2017. That is the end of my presentation, and I'll be glad to try to entertain any questions.
Ms. Hutchison.
Thank you. Earlier in your presentation, you mentioned that we didn't get some money from the state that we were expecting to. On what page is that, and can you explain
Sure.
That to us again, please?
Okay, sure. Here we go. I'm not sure what slide that is. That is slide 5. If you'll look, the fourth line down, Education Foundation Supplement. When Act 388 passed, the way that the EFA measures wealth is assessed valuation in a school district. When the 4% assessments were removed from the calculation, it made this district appear poor. But at the time, the majority of the districts were losing money as a result of that, so there was an imputed assessment that was used. It was imputed from the amount of reimbursement we were getting from the state. I don't want to get too technical because I don't completely understand it all either, but basically what happened was this district on an annual basis loses about $2 to $2.5 million a year in EFA funding because of that change. And that's one of the things that we sought when we met with legislators this year, is to have that imputed value removed. It's a temporary law. If you go strictly with the code of laws, that amount would not be included, that assessment would not be included in the computations. So as a result, the first year of this change, there was something called the Education Foundation Supplement. That was a hold harmless. And this district received approximately $2 million 1 year only. And we'd asked, I guess as a compromise, they just decided to help us a little bit and reinstate about half of that, which is where that $1 million came from. But in the conference committee, that got removed. So we lost about $1 million there.
I thought when I read that, it was our district education foundation supplement. That's how, I don't know if.
I understand the confusion, but that's
Yeah.
just the way that's what it's called, but it's basically a hold harmless.
Okay. I don't know if anyone else got confused. Perhaps just for future reference so that people understand it when we're looking back at this, that it might be helpful to say, even though you've got state up at the top, the State Education Foundation.
I hope we have a reason to discuss this in future years. That means they're considering it.
Right. Thanks. And
Ms. Hutchinson, I think we're going to have the same discussion as the board's agenda.
Oh,
This
I'm
is our
so
public-
sorry.
But I think that's great. I was going to ask the board members, if there's a question you think will clarify anything for our public, I think that'd be great. But this is really, and we got several people signed up, I think, to speak, so.
I'm good with that.
No, that's fine. I think it was a great question. Mr. Richards, that completes your
Yes, sir, it does.
presentation.
Mr. Gant.
Ms. Hammond,
Yes,
if you could
may I
hold
just
on your
speak?
question, we're going to have this same presentation in the regular board meeting that's coming up as soon as we have our public participation on this budget. This is our public hearing, so would that,
Well,
Yes.
let me just say that this isn't about a question. I hear you very well.
okay.
But I was able to follow Mr. Richardson simply because I have my packet and he went by the the printout that I could read and hear him, and I had trouble hearing Ms. Hutchinson. I don't know whether there's a way I can hear everybody as well as I can hear you, and I just wanted to tell you if there was anything they could do to hear what people are saying. I could not hear very well.
Okay, Mr. Bounds is kind of checking the technical part of that.
Okay, thank you. That was
Let
all
me
I-
know
I
if you're not hearing when we get into the further part of the.
Thank you, because
Okay.
I hear you well.
Okay.
And I followed Ms. Hutchinson a little bit, and Mr. Richardson, but it's like they're just far away, and I'm really I'm missing some of the words.
Okay. Well, thank you. Keep us aware, and we're trying to handle
Thank
a
you.
few technical.
That's all I
difficulties.
wanted to say.
All right, thanks. And that will bring us to our public participation regarding the 2016-17 proposed budget. And I'll remind our speakers that the board welcomes and encourages public participation even at this public hearing on the budget. We ask that you will adhere to the procedures and decorum provided in board policy BEDH, public participation at meetings. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Dr. Harris will raise a time over here. Any questions asked during public participation and put in writing will receive a written response in a timely manner. So with that, we will hear from, actually only have one signed up, Ms. Kim Murphy.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I'll try to be brief. First of all, there was no information on your website to show what was just presented. So it's very hard for the public to comment on this huge budget proposal. So in the future, if you could let us know what it is you're proposing, it would make it easier for the public to understand it and speak for or against it or offer input. Secondly, I had information on my cell phone, and I can't pull it up for some odd reason. Technology doesn't like me. I don't really like it either. But if I recall correctly, your budget...
Ms. Murphy, hold one second. I'm having trouble hearing Ms. Murphy. I don't know why. Or maybe you could just pull that up a little closer. Are y'all having a problem with that? Okay.
Yeah, I can't hear good either.
Okay.
The budget that you are proposing is $54 million more than what was proposed in 2007. And I used these numbers last year for the budget that was proposed. I'm doing it this year. In that time period, our student growth has been negligible. $54 million in that period of time is unacceptable. But just doing the math for last year to this year, we've increased by 55 students, but you're increasing the budget by $8 million, which is the equivalent of over $146,000 per student. I'm all for giving kids a good education, but if we could have that money towards education, I think we'd have do a better job in our district. I know we do a great job. We've got great teachers and employees that are trying their very best, and I appreciate all they do. But it's how the money is spent that is the issue. And also, I do have a question, maybe it will be answered. This additional money that's coming in from the state, is that one-time money, at $2 million, or is it going to be reoccurring money? Another concern is there's no information or feedback given to the board that will help to educate you on what's going to happen in future years with your budgets and the tax rates that can be used to collect your revenue. Last year, you recouped tax millage rate that you didn't use in previous years. You're not using additional millage rate this year. So does that mean next year you're going to go back and recoup it? I think that should be part of the discussion. Also, you're going to be setting the millage rate essentially tonight. That can be changed come September for the auditors in Lexington County and Richland counties. I'm hopeful that if you see there is more revenue that you will consider reducing the tax rate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Ms. Murphy is the only person that signed up, so that concludes our public participation regarding our 2016-2017 budget. And I will adjourn the public hearing. At the same time, I will call to order and convene the regular meeting of the school board